tutelage, man. So, it's all right. There we go.
That's why I'm here.
That's 2 weeks in a row. See, you keep me honest here, but we're not alone this week. So, as you guys know, we interviewed Bryce Cannon, the frat star, a couple of weeks ago. Had some great fun with him, had some awesome stories, and we are honored to have his tag team partner, another member of Exotic Youth, Zach Mosley, joining us today. Zach, how are you, man?
Doing fantastic. Couldn't be doing any better.
Love it. Glad to hear it. Thanks for taking some time to chat with us. I know that, you and I have crossed paths over the years in various forms of social media. I may or may not have helped you guys win some tag team titles along the line. So yeah, it's nice to just kind of sit down.
It's always good to have some attorneys on your side. And, not only that, with the publicity you guys have gotten lately, I couldn't turn it down, of course.
I appreciate that. We appreciate that. Thank you very much. Let's just get right into this, man. Tell us a little bit more about you, where you grew up. We know that you're in Savannah right now. Just tell us the origin story.
Okay, so I grew up in Dallas, Georgia. I was born in Douglasville, Georgia. I'd always been a wrestling fan probably since I was about 2 or 3 years old. My earliest memories were wrestling. My dad was really big into like the Georgia wrestling scene back in the day. He wasn't a wrestler himself. Well, he claims he wrestled one match. I don't know. I can't verify it because I can't find any video. But if you ever come across the Hulk versus the Polish Assassin, you let me know at the Cobb Civic Center.
Gotcha.
But he watched NWA and all that stuff. And when I was growing up, wrestling was always on in the household. So my earliest memories were like seeing Shawn Michaels win the Royal Rumble the second time, Stone Cold Steve Austin coming down with the beer truck and things of that nature. So I kind of always knew that professional wrestling was what I wanted to do from the time I was very young. And, it's kind of funny because I told people throughout school, even through college, they were like, what are you going to do with an accounting degree? And I was like, I'm going to be a pro wrestler. And they're like, are you kidding me? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what I'm going to do. And they've seen that come out at the frat parties when I would get hammered and the pledges would be taking DDTs at that point. So, there was a little bit of a preface there. But I actually started training when I was 18 under Mr. Hughes. It was about 10 years ago in Atlanta at the WWA 4. But I was only there for about 3 months before I went to college. I went to Georgia Southern University down here next to Savannah. And then I went to school. I got my accounting degree. And then I think it was the last month I was in college, one of my buddies hit me up and told me that Robert Gibson had opened up a wrestling school in my hometown of Douglasville. And so within a week of graduation, I was there training with Robert Gibson. And that's where I got the bulk of my training. I trained with him there for about 3 years and trained there for about a year before I started actually traveling and doing shows for myself.
Nice. So I guess to kind of piggyback on that, take us through kind of some of that early training, and we know it's rough on the body, especially those first few months. What is take us through kind of that mentality of that you're still green and still trying to work your way in, and what keeps you going when you're taking those bumps, running ropes, and just basically putting your body through the ultimate litmus test.
Yeah, I mean, so I kind of had like a preview to it from my training with Mr. Hughes, so I thought I was golden. I thought that when I went in there that I was gonna know what I was doing and remember everything. And I mean, I still remembered how to bump and things like that, but even the way that I hit the ropes, Robert was like, no, that ain't it. And then retaught me. And at the time when Robert was teaching me, man, he'd constantly stop us. He'd be like, I want you guys to wrestle 15 minutes. I ain't going to stop you. And before we even lock up, he's stopping us. And I'm like, what the hell, dude? Like, what are you doing? But now looking back, I'm really thankful for that because Robert was really a stickler on the basics. I don't think there's really anywhere else that I know of that you're going to get that kind of training from like a Hall of Famer who is really out there main event in the big stadiums without the big company like WWE. You know what I'm saying? So Ricky and Robert really knew like how to draw an audience, how to get the fans invested. And so that was great training. But as far as like the body aspect of it goes, man, it's been rough on me. I mean, within my first year of training, I started having sciatic nerve issues, which came back to bite me in the ass with my recent injury this past year. But I'm not exactly the safest for myself. I'm safe with the guys that I'm in there with, but I definitely put my body on the line and will do things that not everybody else will do. I'll be the one in the match when somebody says something crazy and Bryce Peps look at me like, okay, you're the one taking that. And I'm like, yeah, I know. So
Awesome.
So definitely, definitely that. But the injuries are part of it. You can't shy away from it. You just have to figure out how you're going to work around it and how you're going to rehab it. That's the main thing.
Yeah, like they always say, it's not ballet, right?
Yeah, I mean, you could get hurt doing the most simple thing, or you get hurt doing something complicated that people think is crazy. I mean, sometimes the crazy stuff, or at least that it appears crazy, is just as safe, or it's not safer than, taking a hip toss. So.
Yeah. So we had mentioned talking about Bryce. What was that first interaction with him? Like, how, did you guys hit it off right away? Was it a learning curve? What happened with him?
So the first time I'd seen Bryce online and stuff. I'd seen the frat boy. I was like, get real, this guy's a douchebag. And then, and then we got booked for Coastal Empire Wrestling down here in Savannah. It was a new company at the time, and Bryce was the first person that they announced, and I believe I was the second. And they were doing a weekly podcast thing where they were introducing their roster, and they had done Bryce's, and then I was on next. And I had brought Pepper Bottom on there with me, and Bryce was in the comment section the whole time talking shit. And I'm like, we're going to have to smack this guy when we go down there. We're going to fucking hate this man. And so fast forward a little bit, we went down there to Coastal for that first show, and we hit it off with Bryce, and me and Peps were like sitting there. It's like kind of like that Step Brothers moment. Like, did we just become best friends? And me and Peps keep looking at each other like, should we like ask him to join Exotic Youth? Because me and Peps came up with Exotic Youth maybe like 2 or 3 months before that. We'd had maybe like a couple of matches with Exotic Youth, but it hadn't really taken off yet. And so that night, like, we just hung out with Bryce, and then we invited him to come train with us at Roberts. And after that, it was, history. We were like, yeah, he's the one we're going to bring in. Because at the time, I think Peps was still pretty new in his training. So we needed somebody else who could really go at that point. No disrespect to Peps. I mean, he was just still learning. So his managing was his strength at that time. So I'd kind of taken him on the road maybe like 2 months after he started training to be my manager, just to kind of show him like what he was getting himself into as far as the travel and everything else goes. But we needed a second guy to really have that tag team, that trio. And Bryce was the perfect fit.
Man, that's awesome. That's awesome. And he had mentioned, during his interview that a lot of people would think, when you see him in the pole and the hair and the paddle, that, he is just, the ultimate bro, but he's the exact opposite of it. I mean, that's great character work. I mean, that's something you need in this business, and he's playing it pretty damn well. But you mentioned your relationship with Pep and the start of Exotic Youth. How did that come about, in those months leading up to adding Bryce into the fold?
Well, me and Peps had been in another group. We were called House of Gold, and we were wrestling like exclusively with that group at Robert Gibson's promotion, APCW in Douglasville. And we kind of split away from that group, and we wanted to have a new identity. So we were just like throwing around names. It's kind of how we came, like the same way we came up with Cornelius Pepperbottom. It's just like, what's the most ridiculous thing you can think of off the top of your head? And at the time, I was growing the mullet, and people started catching on to that and started chanting Tiger King and whatnot. So I was like, okay, well, how about we go with something like Exotic? And then I think Peps was like, how about Exotic Youth? And I was like, yeah, dude, that's fucking perfect right there. So we did that, and I don't know if we really had a whole plan for it. We were just doing like silly skits and stuff, like, kind of trying to just do promos that were different and weren't like what you see of just like a guy pointing at the camera, like saying whatever. We wanted to do like little skits and kind of have like a little fraternity kind of vibe, so that we could have like, like the Hell Week type videos and the stuff like that, where it's like Peps was like training to get in and all that. And so when we brought Bryce into the fold, that was like a whole new dynamic, having 3 people to play off of. Which at the time, we hadn't really been exposed to Bryce much. He was more in the South Georgia area. We didn't really work any of the same shows. So it's kind of surprising that we didn't meet up until that point. But when we did, like, both of our careers took off because of Exotic Youth. So it really worked out in our favor, both as tag team and as singles. So
awesome. How do you think,
nice,
from the beginning of Exotic Youth, how do you think it has evolved over time now over the last couple of months?
Yeah, well, I mean, when we first started, like I said, it was kind of like a play off the Joe Exotic thing, because Tiger King was really hot at the time. And then it didn't really take long for it to take on like an identity of its own. That was just kind of one aspect of it. And then when I'd met Bryce, which I'm sure he told you guys the story about, how I told him, like, you need to graduate from the frat boy to the frat daddy. Because you know, a lot of people probably wouldn't know this, but Bryce was actually not in a fraternity. He just partied with the fraternity guys out in Macon. But I actually was the president of a fraternity at Georgia Southern. And so that's kind of like how we got into that frat show. I don't know if you guys saw that, but so I actually was in the fraternity life
about that.
Oh, okay. But yeah, so I knew all about that frat life, and I told Bryce, I was like, dude, let me help you like kind of add some more realism to it, like more, what's the word, like culturally relevant stuff to it, you know, that identifies with that group. So it's more than just like, you know, a random guy trying to do a frat gimmick where it's kind of like you appeal to just what everybody knows instead of appealing to like that demographic specifically. And I thought, you know, like the more genuine he can be as like seem like a legit frat douchebag, like the better it would be. And you know, it's funny because I don't know if he mentioned this, but me and Peps had the dyed blonde hair, and when we get with Bryce, the first thing he says is, "But I'm not dyeing my hair blonde." And me and Peps are like, "Yeah, he's gonna do it." Well, that's like 2 weeks, right? And sure enough, like 2 weeks later, Bryce sends us a Snapchat of him at the beauty salon getting his hair bleached.
Oh, that's funny. That's
awesome. That's awesome.
So, you know, you're going in talking about how you evolved this faction and in that you know kind of stuff. Is there any part of the business that you found kind of the toughest to learn, as opposed to, you know, what came to you kind of naturally?
Well, for me, like I say, like my training was really tough. Being with Robert Gibson, he was such a stickler about the basics and stuff. And I mean, although I'm like really happy about it now, and like I'm really stickler for that stuff too when we're calling matches and everything else, like, you know, about it making sense, about it not being too much too soon, you know, because a lot of the old timers are about less is more, which I really agree with. But when I first started, that was something that was really hard for me to understand, you know, because I felt like I had the athletic ability to go out there and do moves that were like awe provoking, but at the same time, especially being a heel, that wasn't necessarily what I needed to do. So one thing that helped me evolve as a wrestler was like learning that I don't always have to go out there and do everything. Like a lot of times, the less I do, the better reaction I get, because I'm just being an asshole and I'm taking more time to really interact with the crowd and really be disrespectful to my opponent and not so much worrying about the moves as much. Now, don't get me wrong, I still like to do a unique like setup for my moves. I like to be unique in my move set, but I learned that, like, you know, the flips and typical indie shit isn't always what's going to get you over, especially when that's what everybody's trying to do.
Yeah. No, that definitely makes sense. And, you know, it kind of along those lines of, you know, everything that you've, you know, learned along the way that you've seen, what's come naturally, what hasn't, you know, take us through, you know, if you can think of any moment that, you know, I don't necessarily want to call them botches, but something that you were very upset about that might have gone wrong in a match that you can laugh about now, that you just kind of think back and, oh shit, that's
oh hell
funny.
man, like every match, like I'm such a perfectionist, so every match there's something I'm like, fuck, if we'd have just done that, or if like this wouldn't have messed up or whatever. But a lot of times this happens pretty often. I'm sure Peps and Bryce would be more pissed about it than me, but like during our entrance, I like to do this thing where I jump over the ropes and I do like this roll and like land on my feet and everything. And Bryce and Peps are always like trying to pose on the second rope or like still on the apron when I do it, so it smacks them with the ropes. And I'm just like known in the group for being clumsy as far as that goes. So like a couple weeks ago, maybe a couple months ago now, but Bryce and Peps are both up on the ropes, and I'm trying to go stand up in the corner, and it's like right when Bryce steps up there at the same time, so I like slipped and fell and get back up. It's like shit like that happens all the time. But I mean, as far as botches in the ring, like, you know, I don't really laugh about any of them afterwards. You know, I stay pissed about it if I think about it. I'm like, fuck, man, that match would have been so great if it wasn't for that one thing, you know?
Yeah, no, I got you for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
What would you say right now is kind of the biggest misconception people have about pro wrestling? Are you seeing, you know, with everything online and everything going on, and everybody can be that armchair booker and all that stuff? What is something
we're very guilty of that?
We are. We've been called neckbeards, and we online book, and yes, that's great. We love wrestling, guys. Just we like what we see. What is the biggest misconception you're kind of seeing out there right now?
I mean, I don't know about misconception, but, you know, I constantly see people arguing about, like, is this wrestling? Is this wrestling? Is this wrestling? You know, the all-time debate on, like, who's the best wrestler? What's the best promotion? I mean, it's very simple. Like, who's drawing the most money? Anytime somebody forgets about what this business is, and that's what it is a business, then they're forgetting that aspect of it. You know, like there's guys out there who are not the greatest wrestlers, even like in our local state. And I'm sure that he won't be offended by me saying this, but like a guy like Hold My Beer Hansen, you know, he's not going to go out there and give you a 5-star wrestling match, but he's going to go out there and he's going to get people excited and he's going to get people engaged in what he's doing. And he doesn't have to go out there and throw the prettiest arm drags and know 100 leg locks. You know what I'm saying? I think, you know, as far as the booking thing goes that you guys were talking about, you know, everybody always wants to book the show. Everybody always wants to say, you know, this would have been better. This would have been better. And I think I heard Triple H say this on a recent press conference. It's like, you just got to let the story play out. You just got to let the story play out, because you don't know, nobody ever knows, like, what are all the factors behind the booking decisions, like, for instance, like who's available at the time, who's, you know, going on vacation or having a baby, or who might not be 100% right now, but we still have them out there, but we don't want to push them too hard yet, you know? You know, a lot of the times, especially with WWE, I know people are always pissed about their booking decisions, and I haven't kept up with a whole lot of it lately, but I know there's a lot of stuff online about LA Knight. It seems like everybody really wants LA Knight to get that big push right now. Everybody's like, well, don't miss the moment. Don't miss the moment. It's like, dude, LA Knight's so damn good. It doesn't matter when the moment is. He's going to have that moment. And when he does, he's going to be able to capitalize on it. It's like, if the fans say, well, the momentum's going to slow down by then. Well, then that's the fan support that fell off. That's their own fault. You know what I mean? It's not WWE's fault to say, well, that you didn't support this guy through that story. You know what I mean? I think a lot of times, you know, people just have to think about it as a story. And whenever I book, which I don't know if Bryce mentioned this, but we do have some booking experience ourselves. We try to tell stories in such a way that it's like show to show. It's kind of like a weekly episodic TV show, and don't even think about it as wrestling. You know, it's like, how can we set up a conflict between these people and make it interesting, and have, you know, little skits and promos in between to build these matches to where it's not just two guys getting in the ring and having a wrestling match. You know, and there's arguments about that. It's like, well, does every match have to have a story? Well, in my opinion, I think so. I think yes, because I think if not, then what's the point? You know, if it's just one match to get out there and get the people hyped up and get a pop or whatever, I mean, that's great if it's a spot show or whatever. But if you're trying to run the same town or even nationally, like multiple different towns, you want something that people can dive into quickly and get to know the characters, get to know something about them that makes them invest in that person, because it's not going to be a 450 splash or you know, a double moonsault that does it, because there's so many guys out there who can do that. But there's a lot less guys who can connect with an audience, really go out there and get a crowd excited or really piss a crowd off, which, you know, that's what we love. And that's what we pride ourselves on, is our ability to get the fans off of their chairs and flicking us off. That's what we want. And, you know, it always happens. So security, you know, a lot of places security has to come out beside us and everything else. So
really? Okay. So you mentioned it briefly. On a scale of 1 to 10, how hard is it to book a card?
Oh man, that's some of the toughest things you can do. But especially, it's a lot easier when you have full control over it. Whenever you're trying to book for somebody else and you just have like, okay, here's the pieces and fit them together, it's a lot harder, because then it's kind of like, well, shit, like I don't really see this guy in that same light. Yeah, you know, I don't really think that's his strength or whatever. But you know, I think it's something that we really had a knack for naturally. I don't know if you guys have checked out Right On Bro or any of the Coastal Empire wrestling shows, but we really enjoy taking characters, and that's the thing. We try to book guys who are characters, guys who can go in the ring, who can lead a match, but can also really offer something different and show that they have thought out, like, who are they? What is their brand? What is their gimmick? And then when you have guys like that, it's very easy to book a card, because you think about, like, just how would this crazy dancing fool like CJ Shine interact with like these weasel characters in Noir, you know? And it's just to see what happens between the two of them after you've laid that foundation. I mean, that's the artist picture to paint. But, you know, as far as like cancellations and making sure there's not too much of the same thing going on in the card, and making sure that the times are right, and making sure that it goes an amount of time that, you know, fans are still excited at the end. And this is the main thing that I always say about booking, is that at the end of the show, the fans shouldn't be ready to get up whenever they hear the final bell ring at the main event. They should be still wanting to stay in the building and talk to the wrestlers and not want to leave, because that's when you know that they're going to want to come back to the next one. But if they're all like checking their time, like they're looking at their phone, saying like, well, what time are we going to get home tonight? And they're pissed off because the shows went 3.5 hours, no matter the quality. I mean, if you're going to a local indie show, you don't want to be sitting there with your kids for 3.5, 4 hours trying to watch the show because the attention span's just not there. You want 2.5 hours of really good entertainment. You want to see a little bit of athleticism. You want to see some drama. You want to see some violence, and you want to get out of there. And you want the fans to still want to be there at the end of it. And so that's the key, in my opinion.
Yeah, makes all the sense in the world to me. I mean, we went to, you know, and not throwing in Raw under the bus or WWE under the bus. We went to one a couple months ago, and it was 3.5 hours, Eric, for almost 4 hours. And by the end of it, we were both exhausted. So,
right. I mean, and that's with the top level quality talent in the world. I mean, even with that, and you know, true wrestling fans like yourselves are getting tired and thinking like, okay, they need to hurry this up. We don't want that to happen on any of the shows we're booking.
Yeah. No, 100% agree.
Yeah. So I have been dying to ask you this question since Bryce was on the show. And for those that don't remember, and this is also in our archives on YouTube and Spotify, feel free to check it out. But there was a trip to Dallas over WrestleMania weekend in which all of you were supposed to fly out of Georgia at the same time. Some people made it to Dallas, made it to their flight on time. Somebody did not. Now, we've heard what happened at the airport, or at least while Bryce is sitting on the plane getting ready to take off and sees a number of 8x10s that are just scattered all over an airport tarmac in Atlanta. So for all of our listeners, tell us your side of what happened and why you didn't make it to Dallas on that flight.
Yeah, so I had worked some long shifts at work. I got off at like 5:30 that morning. So I told Peps and Bryce, I was like, I ain't going to be able to meet y'all at Bryce's house. I'm just going to go straight to the airport. Well, my ride to the airport dropped me off at arrivals instead of departures for one. So I'm like running through the airport trying to get through on that regard. And I've got all these bags with all this merch and everything else because I'm like, we're going to Dallas. I'm not taking our shit out there. We're trying to spread, you know, the marketing and everything else. Well, everything's smooth. I get to the TSA line, and the dude with the purple mullet always gets searched. I'm just going to tell you that right now. And I was telling Peps and Bryce, and they weren't believing this shit, man. I was like telling them, I was like, dude, I always get stopped in airports. I promise you, I always get stopped. And they're like, well, you better hurry. I'm like, dude, I can't handle like how fast they want to fill me up. Like, that's on them. So these guys are filling me up, whatever. And then I finally get my stuff, and I'm like running to the plane. I'm running. As soon as I see the gate, they're like closing the gate, and I'm like sprinting. And I've seen on Snapchat, Bryce and Peps had sent me, we're like, they're on there, and the stewardess is calling and saying, last call for Zach Mosley. I'm like, motherfucker, dude. So they're like, yeah, we're going to have to put you on another flight, and it's going to be like a few hours later. And I'm like, shit, because at this point, I know I'm supposed to go get the rental car. I know I'm supposed to be at the Airbnb so I could drop the stuff off before heading to Haltom City for the show. Because it's like the show wasn't even in Dallas. It was like 45 minutes out of Dallas, and I still had to go get the car and all this other stuff. Well, I'm sitting there getting ready for takeoff, and Bryce and Peps and the promoter are all playing a joke on me, all ribbing me, telling me that that they got double booked at the venue and the show's going to have to go on earlier. And so my phone's dying at this point. And I'm like trying to offer people $100 for a damn phone charger so I can figure out if they're bullshitting me or not, which I never did. Luckily, I never did spend that money that was unnecessary. And so I'm just sitting there with fucking anxiety the whole time, like thinking, if I miss this fucking show, I'm going to be so pissed. I'm going to be so pissed. And I know Bryce like to say that I'm untimely or late to things. And, you know, he's right. But, yeah, so no sleep at all, arrive at Dallas airport. Well, actually, no. So I'm fast forwarded through the part where you guys were talking about the merch on the runway. So after they tell me that I'm not going to be able to make the flight, I'm like, okay, well, I'm just going to go chill out in the airport. Well, I get a call on my phone saying, hey, your bags spilled out all over the tarmac, unfortunately, and we have your bags at the front of the airport. So now I've got to go back through the airport and then go try to figure out where the hell my stuff is. They have one of the bags. The other two bags, they told me, well, we don't know if it made it on that plane to Dallas or if it's still here in Atlanta. And I'm sitting here thinking, when I get there, I don't even know if I'm going to have my gear or not. Like, I still didn't figure that out until I got to Dallas. I had no idea. But so since I had to go back to the front of the airport, I had to go back through the TSA checkpoint again. And guess who they decided to search a second time?
Oh my God.
And so, I'm up there. I can't sleep because I'm so damn pissed off. Like, I'm like scared to miss another flight. So I just stay awake throughout all this and finally get on the plane and arrive. And like, man, I was exhausted, but I'll get to the theater like an hour and a half before the show starts and get there and tore the house down. So it ended up working out. So I always come through, even though I might be late, I always come through.
I like it. I like it. That is.
It's a great story. That's a
really
great
is.
story.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's like the biggest spots that I can go laugh about now. That was definitely spot. Fuck that spot, dude.
That's great. That's great.
So that was a crazy story. It's a crazy moment. Let's kind of stay on that path. What has been your kind of biggest oh shit moment in wrestling so far? Like this is what I'm actually doing in my life. Like what moment had you like on your like just goosebumps?
Man, honestly, I think the one, and this probably wouldn't be like the biggest moment of my career or anything else, but like it was something that I had envisioned for many years, and like making it come to light was that Riot on Road show. And not only like seeing like how well it was received, like for my match and like the things that I did with my fraternity brothers there in the house, but for like seeing the entire show that we put together and seeing that like we are able to create and we are able to put something out there that really caters to like a specific audience. And like, I mentioned that I have an accounting degree, but I also got my master's in business administration, which, no jobs are going to hire me for that with the way I look. And Monday through Friday jobs I really can't do because I got shows on Friday I got to get to. So I like to at least use that lens that I got in my master's program in the way I think about wrestling. And I really think about like market research and like doing things specific to the audience that you're catering to for that particular show, and to see that like how much fun my fraternity had with that, and seeing like when I came out, like it was so thunderous, man. I had goosebumps, like just like you said, like every hair on my body was standing up when I came out and I heard everybody chanting my fraternity name and chanting my name and getting ready to go in that match. I mean, it was just absolutely ape shit, dude. It was sick. But nice. I mean, there's been a lot of big moments, man. A lot of big moments. One of the things I enjoyed most was probably, I don't know if you guys seen our feud with Natural Vibes from Dragon Gate earlier this year. With MEW and putting together that video sequence where they came and jumped us in the hotel, and that whole angle and like the detail that was put into it of like Peps being in the background, showing him in the corner, like stealing the belts that same night and then putting it up on live and trying to do that as a publicity stunt. And just seeing all that stuff come through and like talking to Dragon Gate executives and getting them convinced to let us steal their belts. Because if you know anything about Japanese wrestling, you know that like the belts are sacred over there. Like respect is huge. So when I'm pitching this angle to Dragon Gate, and I'm sitting there thinking like they're sitting there on mute, like laughing at me or something, right? And as soon as I get done talking, they're like, "Oh, we love that. We love that. Like our only reservation is that these guys barely speak any English. So are you guys going to be able to like tell them what to do or like get them, to understand what it is?" And I'm like, absolutely. And I mean, if they want to talk, they can talk in Japanese. And so that made them a lot more comfortable. But seeing that come through, I think the creative stuff for me has been even more fulfilling than the in-ring stuff. Which I do enjoy. I mean, I love it. That's my passion, but I love creating just as much. So
yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah,
that's
and
awesome.
It kind of goes back to your point earlier about just the storytelling and what the business is about. So that's cool to hear that was the moment.
Yeah,
outside of the ring. That's awesome.
Yeah, I like giving people something else to bite into, because here's something I always tell people when it comes to promos. It's like if they scroll past it on Facebook and they see at the very beginning you're saying on August 12th, I'm going to be at the blah, blah arena fighting whoever the hell. Regular people are just going to skip past it. They're tired of seeing your advertisement at this point. But if you can get them to watch a video and you're sitting on there bitching about somebody, or you're complaining about a personal issue for like a minute before they even know it's a wrestling promo, then you've got them hooked. And you might have somebody who never would have even considered coming to a wrestling show. Now they're like, dude, you got to see this shit. They're like showing their friends and like, look at what these guys are fighting about. This is fucking ridiculous, And that's the kind of thing I'm into is really going outside the box, especially with, the way technology's advanced. And I feel like it's way underutilized in the way people do promos these days. You know, it's not all about doing the classic Dusty promo talking about we're gonna be in Marietta, Georgia, and Rome, Georgia, and all this. And they're like, Dusty's the king, man. He's fucking good at it. But imagine what Dusty Rhodes would be doing right now if he had a cell phone and a tripod.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Seriously.
So,
man,
Great Dusty impression too.
Yeah, seriously.
It's always fun to hear those.
Yeah. Yeah. But, you know, you obviously you're a very creative individual, and you had one of the most, at least that I've ever seen, one of the most creative wrestling venues that I have ever seen. Tell us about how this show came to be at your frat house at Georgia Southern.
well, so I was working what was it, this year? Yeah, it was like the beginning of January. I got a job writing for MEW Vibe, which I actually came up with the format for that show, and then they pitched that, and that's what got us on the Premier Streaming Network, which was very short-lived, unfortunately. But part of my pitch to them was like, I have a great idea and nobody's doing enough of this. And this is taking this type of wrestling to college towns and to fraternities. And I was like, we can do this. My fraternity would love this event. And I just pitched it to the fraternity. I pitched it to the company, and they were like, hell yeah. Like both sides were all about it. And then MEW went under and kind of fell off. And so I was like, well, I'm not about to tell my fraternity that this isn't happening. So I had to figure out a way to make it happen myself. And so I asked Bryce for his help in getting ready for like all the marketing content and all of the card and the stories and everything else. And I just went down there to the chapter and told them, like, this is what we're going to do. This is how it's going to be. I took an Excel sheet and like mapped out the whole house and like where the ring was and everything else, which that did no fucking good once we got there and put the ring in there. You know what I mean? You know, it's like I had it foot by foot, and it's still like, you know, the space, you just can't visualize it the same. But they were hype about it. I mean, it didn't take much convincing at all for them, but especially because to begin with, it was going to be a free event completely, because I was going to do it with MEW, and my pitch to MEW was, it's like, we're going down there to do this for proof of concept, to prove that it's going to work. And then we'll get other fraternities on board to start buying these events. Well, when it came down to it, I told the fraternity, I was like, you know, I'm not going to try to charge you guys out the ass for this, but I have to get something in order to be able to get the ring down there and to take care of the other expenses like insurance and things like that. So you know, we found a way of figuring that out, and that was a bit of a challenge. But other than that, I mean, everything went so smoothly. I think that a lot of people were super stressed out about it, and I was at times. But when the day came, like, man, I was hyped. I was ready for it. You know, we were in there setting up the ring, and Bryce and Peps were like, I don't know if this is gonna work. I was like, don't worry about it. It's gonna work. It's gonna work. Don't fucking worry. People are gonna be standing up everywhere. It's gonna be insane.
Love it.
Yeah, that's amazing. So we'll kind of get you out of here on a quick little question that we have. One piece of advice for anyone looking to get into the business, and then any names that we need to keep an eye on or look out for moving forward.
Okay. So advice for anyone looking to get into the business, go find a reputable trainer. Do your research and figure out what is it that they excelled in, and kind of what's their mindset and what's their philosophy on training before just going to somebody who's local. You know, they might be 20 minutes away and it might be the closest wrestling ring, but it might be worth your time to drive 2 hours to go train. And, you know, people do that. I mean, speaking to Pepper Bottom's work ethic, he used to drive 2 hours each way to train with Robert Gibson. And that's 4 times a week. So that's the type of dedication that it takes. And the biggest piece of advice is really just know what you're getting yourself into. I mean, this is not the glitz and the glamour that people think it is. You know, it took a long ass time driving to little holes in the walls in Alabama and Gulf Coastal Florida for me to ever get my name out there to even start getting booked in my home state. You know, and I had the talent and I had the proper training, but when you have no video, I mean, what are you going to do? Like, what is a promoter going to say to you? He's going to say, well, come help me set up the ring. I mean, you got to be out there building your video content up, and you got to have something that sets you apart from the next guy who's a good wrestler. But you're never going to get those things if you don't go to the proper place for training for whatever it is that you're trying to do. You know, and I was thankful and still am that I got trained by Robert Gibson, because I really have that old school mindset of it. And not only did Robert teach us the right way to wrestle, he taught us the business side of it as well. And, Robert's the first to be talking about slinging some gimmicks and everything else and letting you know that that's where your pay is going to come from, especially when you first start out. It's all down to marketing. I mean, who knows how many shirts Rock and Roll Express has sold since the 80s, man? Probably millions.
Yeah, seriously.
But like, just go somewhere where you're going to get training that's going to suit you, but don't just go down the street to somebody who fucking got their hands on a wrestling ring and claims that they're a legend. Any local jackass can open up a wrestling school. There's no like commission that says this guy's qualified enough or not. You know what I mean? So that's the biggest thing, because I see that all the time, guys who want to get booked and stuff, and they're like, well, I've been training. I'm like, well, where have you been training? Who have you been training with? And then a lot of times I'll see these guys and then I'll see their trainer and I'm like, no disrespect to anybody in particular, but it's like, dude, it's like, if this guy's training you, he needs to go get in a training class himself. So why do you think that you going and training is going to get you up to be on the level to be on our show? It's not. And it's like, I'll tell you where to go train, or you can come in early and, we'll even work with you if you want to get on our show. But if you're not up to the level of the guys that we're booking, you're not going to get on the show. And that's how a lot of the promoters are going to be. And another thing that I didn't really understand early on is, even if you are on the level with the other guys on their show, if you don't fit that specific thing that they need for the storyline, especially when they have their guys that they're loyal to in their core group, it's going to be really hard at first to get bookings until you have something that is must see, until you have something that people want on every show. And when we hit that stride with Exotic Youth, that's when our careers took off. So find your own thing, how we did with Exotic Youth, how we went from just being Zach Mosley and Pepper Bottom and Bryce Cannon to being something bigger than ourselves now. Because that's what's gotten us our opportunities.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Great piece of advice.
Yeah, absolutely. So who are some names that we should be on the lookout for in the indie scene?
Okay, so my favorite guy's up and coming right now, which this guy, he's a veteran of the business, but he just recently moved to Georgia. One of my favorite wrestlers out there right now is CJ Shine. Check him out. He's on Riot on Row. You can find him from Coastal Empire Wrestling. I know he does a lot of stuff out there still in Missouri. So he's one of the guys I always shout out to anybody who's looking for new talent. He's entertaining. He can really go and he can lead a match. He can really teach something to the guy he's in there with a lot of cases. So him, another guy is the Flying Fro, Michael Walker. He is a fan favorite. He blows the roof off the place every time he's out there, especially in Savannah, Georgia. They don't stop screaming, "Fear the Fro." He was a huge hit at the frat house show. This one dude, he's one of my fraternity brothers. Forgive me, I can't remember his name, but he's one of the younger guys. But he kept walking outside. He was hammered after the show, and me and my girl were out there chilling and just talking about everything. And he came out there. He's got the shirt on. He's like, "Dude, fear the fucking Fro!" And he grabs one of his fraternity brothers in a headlock, and he starts choking. He said, "You better fear the fucking Fro, man!" And so, I'll never forget that. We took a Snapchat of it and sent it to Fro. He was dying laughing. But him, and then another guy who, I haven't really seen a whole lot of his wrestling, but his ability to piss people off and his ability to talk on the microphone, this kid, Chip Schuyler, he's only 19 years old, and this kid is a star. I mean, if he's not going to be a big player in wrestling, he's going to be a big player in Hollywood. So I hate the kid personally because he's the owner of Coastal Empire Wrestling, and he makes my life a living hell. His daddy owned MEW. His daddy showed up at the frat house. His daddy, Simon Sermon, he sends me videos of him in the bathtub trying to scare me. But nonetheless, Chip Schuyler is going to be the shit one day. Who else? Randy Reno don't get enough love. So let me throw that out there. Randy Reno. Another guy that I think has got a world of potential is KJ Impala. I don't really put him over a whole lot, but I think I'll actually be whooping his ass this Saturday in Atlanta at the Cobb Galleria. If anybody wants to come check that out at the Southern Fried Gaming Con.
I was gonna say, Mr. Cincinnati is gonna go right into the segue. Watch this.
Love it. No, I'm not. that is actually perfect because we are, kind of talking about what is next for Zach Mosley. Obviously, there's some big events coming up with Exotic Youth over the next couple of months, but tell us kind of what you see for the next few months for you.
For the next few months, man, shit. My schedule is so packed, I have no idea where I'm even going to be. But I know that this Saturday, like I said, we're going to be at the Cobb Galleria and the Southern Fried Gaming Con. The following weekend, I'm going to go visit a place that I was previously banned from. I haven't said much about it, but, the weather's looking nice. I think I might head down to the Gulf. So if anybody sees this who will be in attendance there, as long as they don't have security getting ready to throw me out of the building the second I get there, I might try to sneak my way in.
Okay.
And then also, huge freaking show, August 19th at Coastal Empire Beer Co. Coastal Empire Wrestling presents Chip's Purge. And apparently Daddy's coming with him. I'm taking on Joe Black in a first-time ever matchup for the Coastal Empire Heavyweight Championship. Bryce and Pepperbottom taking on the Seventh Sons, Duncan Mitchell and Aaron Dallas, which is definitely going to be a banger. And I can't wait to see Flying Fro versus Kenway. That's going to be on fire as well. Murder One's also going to be down there, probably putting his foot up somebody's ass. So yeah, we got big things coming all around. But that's the thing I want to plug the most. If anybody hasn't checked it out, go check out Coastal Empire Wrestling. We're on YouTube. We post full shows there about 2 weeks after the event. Right now we run every 2 months. We're looking to try to go once a month again. Starting at the beginning of next year. So any sponsors out in Savannah, if anybody's listening in Savannah, any venues looking to bring top quality professional wrestling and have the biggest party of the year at your place, let us know. And also plug for Frat House Wrestling. All you fraternities out there, if any fraternities listen to this, hit me up at frathouserwrestling@gmail.com to book your Riot on Row.
Love that.
Yeah, what a promo.
Yeah, I don't think I could have. Yeah, that's. I mean, that's
that wasn't even a promo, man. That's just me talking.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Zach, man, thank you so much for joining us. This has been just an absolutely awesome conversation. It's good to finally put a face to the name after all these years, and we appreciate having you on. And I think that we both got the same feeling. This is probably not going to be the last time that you and or Bryce are going to be on the show here. So before we let you go, tell everybody where they can find you on social media.
Okay, so at Zach Mosley Official on Instagram, Zach Mosley 104 on Twitter, and then Exotic Youth Official on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube, which is where you can find Riot on Row. And again, go check out Coastal Empire Wrestling. And shit, what was the other thing I was going to plug? Damn, I forgot. Oh, I was just going to let you know that I might need some more legal recourse. So I'll be getting in touch with you very soon.
All right. Yeah, that sounds great, man. Zach, thank you again for joining us for the podcast at Chris Hoops. I'm Mr. Cincinnati, Eric Robinson. Thank you much. This has been the Wrestling Junkies podcast. We'll talk to you guys soon.